Hi, this is Tom with Going Into Tomorrow. I am here with my great friend Blake. Blake and I have had the opportunity to work together for the last 5 years and now going in different directions career-wise, but we'll remain friends forever. So,
That's right.
Blake, I appreciate you. So, Blake, the question we had, can you tell us a little bit about yourself first?
Sure. Blake Wieland. So originally from the small town of Hydro, Oklahoma, in the western part of the state. It was kind of I always compare it to the closest thing I know of some sort of a Mayberry type setting. We lived about 100 yards from our church where we were there regularly, and had two older sisters. So I was three older sisters of the youngest, vastly outnumbered, and left there, went to Oklahoma State, and got out of there in 2014. And career-wise, been a little bit all over the place. I worked in the public policy, political sphere for a couple of years, and then made a pretty hard pivot in 2017, went to go work as the development director of a nonprofit, which in a roundabout way, after a few years, led to me coming to work for you here at JPI. And that's where I've been for the last 5 years until last week. And then most importantly, I'll mention that in 2019, I met who's now my wife of almost 5 years, and we've got 3 beautiful girls. And I'm, again, after a short little break I had in my mid-20s when I lived for myself, I'm back to being vastly outnumbered and living with a lot of girls again.
Yeah, that was just, that was meant to be.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So, Blake, the question we ask everyone is there a particular Bible verse or passage or character that really speaks to you now or maybe in a particular period of your life? And can you tell us what that scripture is and why that means something to you?
Sure. The one that always comes to my mind first is 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 17, which says, "Therefore, whoever is in Christ is a new creation. The old is gone and the new has come." That was one of those verses that I know I had heard. As I mentioned, we were regularly in church growing up. I'm sure I probably heard it 40 different times, but different verses or different passages of the Bible kind of hit you between the eyes, depending on what you're going through. And let me back up. I started school at Oklahoma State in 2010, never having been around alcohol, really. Certainly had never partaken in it or anything, to just 5 years later, I was a severe alcoholic. Went from being introduced to it to a pretty heavy partier to, just to give you a little bit of a snapshot, in 2015, which was the last year that I drank. In that year, I got let go from 2 jobs. I had 2 automobile accidents that were very serious. Fortunately, I was the only one that was involved. It's amazing that I'm alive today. I had completely abolished any sort of trust that anybody had. Friends wouldn't talk to me. Family didn't trust me as far as I could throw them. I mean, it was bad. Don't be fooled by a starched shirt and a haircut. It was really bad. And the end of that year, on December 2nd, I woke up in a jail cell in Kingfisher, Oklahoma. That was the second time I'd been arrested that month. So it'd been a busy month. And I always kind of equate it to, God giving me a light switch and saying, hey, whenever you're ready to flip this on and kind of give me control of your life, go ahead. And for whatever reason, that was the morning that, I flipped it on. And I called a 90-day men's treatment facility, a rehab center in southern Oklahoma. Had to get out a loan. I was broke. I had no vehicle. Had to get out a loan from a banker that I'd known my whole life. That's a really interesting experience if you've never had the chance. And had to get out a loan to go to treatment there. And this was on December 2nd. They couldn't get me in until 3 days before Christmas. And so stayed sober, kind of went back home with my parents. And then when December 22nd came around, my mom and my dad dropped me off at this place in southern Oklahoma. And this is my second treatment center of that year, by the way. So there wasn't a lot of confidence that this one was going to work on anybody's behalf. And it was in the middle of an ice storm. The electricity was out. It was extremely cold and just uber depressing, right before Christmas. And my dad, as they were dropping me off, said, hey, we from a very small community, very tight-knit church, close family, everybody's going to ask where you're at, what you're up to, what's going on. Can I tell them a little bit about your struggle, what's been going on, so that they can be praying for you? I said, that's fine. There's probably not many people that aren't aware to begin with, so go ahead. And they dropped me off, and about 5 days later, I started receiving letters in the mail. And there was a mailbox in the office that I could go check once a day. And they were from old teachers, people from our church, family members, and they all were letters of encouragement. They all meant very well, but they would all kind of read something along the lines of, we're very sorry that this has happened to you. You know, this is very challenging. So sorry to hear this, more of a sympathetic tone. And one day I opened one letter, and before I even opened it, I could see at the top of it, it said Edith Ince. And now Edith is a lady that's now in her 90s. She's still alive, but I'd known her and her family my entire life. I mean, we're from a community of 900 people. And I knew Edith very well. And so I opened it up, and the letter that Edith had given me, it started out, I still remember the first sentence. And I've talked about this for 10 years, and I still almost get choked up every time I talk about it.
Me too.
The first sentence said, Blake, comma, I am so excited for you, with a couple exclamation points. You know, like I had won the Olympics or some Nobel Peace Prize winner or something like that. And it went on to talk about how very few people at the age of 24, which I was at that time, have the opportunity to press the reset button and kind of start over. And she wanted, you know, it said in there to be looking for what God was going to do next in my life, all these new people that I was going to be able to reach to and have a testimony that I didn't before, and how the best is yet to come. And something about that, you know, I think God used Edith in that moment and that message to kind of flip another switch on, where it's like, hey, you're out of money, you're out of a job, you don't have a vehicle, you have no friends, nobody trusts you, you're at a very low point in your life. Watch what I'm about to do. Watch this transformation that's about to take place. And I began to get very excited by that. And in that letter, she had quoted the verse, 2 Corinthians 5:17, and that kind of became my motto for the rest of the stint in rehab. I actually, you might appreciate this, I remember about 2 days after I opened that letter, a ministry came, and they were a sober living ministry. This is like day 9 of a 90-day treatment facility. And so I heard them kind of share a little bit, and I walked up, and they had these 2 phones outside. I picked up one of them, and I called my parents, and I said, hey, do you know what I'm doing when I leave here, like where I'm going to live? And they said, we hadn't really thought about it. And I said, well, I'd like to move into this ministry if it's okay. It's a sober living thing. Is that all right with you? And they're like, of course, that's okay. Like, it's what we've been praying for 3 years. Sure. And so I began to get very excited about, you know, what God was going to do every day in my life. And, you know, the new challenges that there were to overcome. I always say it kind of in a joking way, but there's some truth to it. If you've never had the opportunity to be in rehab and go use the office computer and search for a job, a home church, an AA meeting, a used car, and an attorney, you haven't fully lived. It makes for a pretty eventful morning. And I began to get very excited about it. And, you know, I look back at it's been 10 and a half years now since I checked into that rehab center, so 10 and a half years sober. And it has hands down been the best 10 and a half years of my life, far better than the previous 24. And that's a direct result of God using me, pulling me out of that situation and kind of saying, hey, young man, ye of little faith, you're about to see what I can really do with your life. And I've been blessed beyond measure, and I really cannot take any of the credit for it. It all belongs to God.
Well,
so
thank you for that, Blake. And Lori and I believe in angels, and we believe Edith is one.
I do too.
And was and is. And just her analogy of who's going to benefit from your story is really what this program is all about.
Yeah.
So, given that, going into tomorrow, who, Blake, do you think can benefit from this story and your testimony?
I think anybody. Your story doesn't have to be alcoholism or addiction, but even I know we had talked about this same topic about 2 weeks ago, and even in the last 2 weeks, there's been a number of people that I've visited with. One of them, a very close family member of mine, struggles with anxiety and kind of, I think, past sins and past guilt and things that you've gone through, which, by the way, Paul, writing to the new church in that passage, knows a thing or two about. Sure. He was a career Christian murderer before he was converted. And so if God can use Paul, he can certainly use me, and he can use everybody else. And I think about the things that I tell my own self, and I know I'm not unique in that way, but we all have a little script, sometimes on a daily basis, of things that we tell ourselves we're not worthy of, or that we're not good at, or maybe it's something that we've done embarrassing in our past, or something shameful in our past. And I would just shine the spotlight from what you say about yourself onto what God says about you. And that's the ultimate truth. And I think that's the ultimate message, is as everybody or your viewers that might be struggling with things that they've done in their past, or maybe something that they're overcoming, it's look to what God says that you are. That's the ultimate truth, not necessarily what we tell ourselves or what we call ourselves or what anybody else says about us. It's what God says about us that matters the most, and what we should be leaning on.
Thank you, Blake. You and Emmy are a great blessing to Lori and I and our family, and we love you. Thank you for participating.
Well, we love you too, and I'll say this because your viewers also won't be aware of this, but 5 years ago I kind of signed up to work under you. You were my boss, and I was hoping you'd be a good boss, and you've been not only that, a great friend and a mentor, and half the time we talk, it's not even work related. It's just about life, and I really cherish that and value that. So thank you.
Me too. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay.